Picture two things happening on the same continent at the same time, aimed at the exact same problem. In one place, a construction crew is digging a trench through difficult terrain, laying fiber optic cable 1 kilometer at a time, week after week, months after months. Overhead, completely unrelated to that crew, on the other side of the planet, satellites are already beaming signal down to a dish that someone could set up in an afternoon. Two completely different approaches, same goal. And yet, after all of that effort on both fronts at the same time, most of the 400 million Africans who are still offline remain offline. So which one is actually going to solve this? Fiber? Satellite? Or is everyone arguing about the wrong question entirely? The question I hear constantly from ministers, regulators, and telecom executives is some version of this. Which technology should we be betting our national broadband strategy on? It is an understandable question. It is also, in most cases, a question that has to be reconsidered. Because asking which technology wins is a little like asking whether a truck, a train, or a ship is the best way to move goods. The honest answer depends entirely on the terrain, the distance, the volume, and the destination. Think about a young engineer trying to bring internet to a small town in a mountainous, sparsely populated region. Fiber would take years and enormous expense to reach that town. The terrain alone makes it one of the most expensive things her budget could fund. A satellite dish could be active there within a week. But 30 kilometers away, in a dense city center packed with people streaming video and running businesses online, that same satellite connection would buckle under the load. While a fiber line, once built, could carry essentially unlimited capacity for decades. Same country, same broadband strategy. Two completely different right answers. So let's get specific. What is each of these three technologies actually good at, and where does each one genuinely struggle? Let's go through them one at a time. Key point 1. LEO satellites, unmatched reach, real limits. Low Earth orbit satellites, the technology behind Starlink and the emerging Amazon LEO constellation, orbit roughly 550 kilometers above Earth, dramatically closer than older generation satellites. That proximity is what makes them genuinely useful. Latency as low as 25 to 60 milliseconds, fast enough for video calls and even some real-time applications, with no need for any ground infrastructure at all. A dish, a clear view of the sky, and a household or business is connected, often within a day. By late 2025, Starlink had launched over 8,600 satellites and was already operational in more than 25 African countries. That reach is real and it is valuable, particularly for the remote, sparsely populated regions that fiber and mobile towers will never reach economically. But LEO has two hard limits that matter enormously for African policy planning. First, cost. Terminal hardware runs several $100s, with monthly subscriptions in the range of $50 to $100, pricing it out of reach for most of the 400 million people the technology is supposedly meant to serve. Second, capacity. Each satellite can only serve a limited number of users in any given area. By early 2026, Starlink had to pause new sign-ups in Lagos, Nairobi and Lusaka, three of Africa's largest, most connectivity-hungry cities, because the network simply could not handle additional demand in those locations. LEO solves the remote coverage problem. It does not solve the dense urban capacity problem. Key point 2. Fiber. Unbeatable capacity, brutal economics. Fiber optic cable remains, in pure technical terms, the best connectivity technology that exists. Virtually unlimited bandwidth, minimal signal loss, complete immunity to weather and interference. It is the backbone that data centers, cell towers and major institutions depend on, and nothing else comes close to its capacity once it is built. The problem has never been the technology. It is the economics of building it. Laying fiber costs in the range of $20,000 to $45,000 per mile, depending on terrain. And that cost climbs sharply in mountainous, forested or low-density rural areas, where the number of paying customers per kilometer of cable is simply too low to ever recover the investment. This is precisely why Africa's fiber footprint, despite genuinely impressive growth from roughly 466,000 kilometers in 2010 to 1.3 million kilometers by 2024, remains heavily concentrated in capital cities and major metropolitan corridors. Fiber is not failing rural Africa because of bad planning. It is failing rural Africa because the unit economics at current population densities do not work without massive public subsidy. Key point 3. 5G, the urban workhorse without a rural plan. 5G occupies the middle ground, and in 2026 it is proving to be Africa's quiet urban success story rather than its rural savior. Fixed wireless access using 5G is increasingly being marketed as a genuine fiber alternative in cities. Kenya's Safaricom more than doubled its 5G sites in a single year, reaching roughly 1,700 sites and covering close to a third of the population. Morocco's regulator has gone further, mandating that licensed operators hit 45% population coverage by 2026 and 85% by 2030. Turning 5G rollout into a binding regulatory commitment rather than a voluntary investment. But 5G has its own affordability wall. Entry-level 5G smartphones in Nigeria cost the equivalent of more than 3 times the monthly minimum wage. And a basic smartphone of any kind already consumes close to half of a low-income earner's monthly income. The result, even where 5G networks exist, is that the devices needed to use them remain out of reach for the people the technology was meant to include. As of 2025, 5G still represented only 1 to 2% of all mobile connections across sub-Saharan Africa, with the overwhelming majority of users still on 2G through 4G, not because 5G coverage does not exist, but because the affordability gap sits one layer below the network itself, in the device in someone's pocket. So, if no single technology solves this on its own, what does the real answer look like? Here is the reframe that matters most, the strategic insight. Here is the strategic reframe I want every policymaker, regulator and operator watching this to hold on to. The debate over which technology wins is fundamentally the wrong debate. Industry analysts and operators across the continent increasingly converge on the same conclusion. No single technology dominates Africa's last mile race. Fiber remains unmatched in dense urban centers. LEO satellite is the only economically rational option for the most remote, sparsely populated regions. 5G fills the space in between, particularly where regulatory coverage mandates push operators to build it out. The future is not a winner. It is a deliberately layered hybrid architecture. And the partnership between Airtel Africa and SpaceX, bringing direct-to-cell satellite connectivity to 14 African markets, covering 174 million customers, is itself proof that even the satellite companies now see themselves as complements to terrestrial networks, not replacements for them. So what does that actually look like in practice? Here are 5 concrete actions for governments and regulators. The practical takeaways. 1. Map technology choice to geography and density, not political preference. National broadband plans should explicitly zone the country by population density and terrain, assigning fiber to dense urban corridors, 5G fixed wireless to peri-urban and secondary cities, and satellite to the most remote and sparsely populated regions, rather than treating one technology as a blanket national solution. 2. Subsidize the connection, not just the infrastructure. Whether the technology is fiber, 5G or satellite, the recurring barrier across all 3 is affordability at the point of use, the device, the subscription, the terminal. A modernized universal service fund must be permitted to subsidize demand-side affordability, not just supply-side infrastructure. 3. Treat satellite capacity limits as a planning input, not a surprise. Regulators should require satellite operators to publish urban capacity constraints transparently, so that national broadband plans do not over-rely on a technology that may pause new sign-ups in exactly the high-density areas a plan is counting on. 4. Push regulatory coverage mandates for 5G with affordability conditions attached. Binding rollout targets, of the kind Morocco has set, are effective for accelerating coverage, but they must be paired with device affordability interventions, or the network will exist with no one able to afford to use it. 5. Build for hybrid resilience, not single points of failure. The most resilient national connectivity strategy pairs at least 2 of these 3 technologies in every region, so that a satellite capacity ceiling, a fiber cut, or a spectrum dispute in any one layer does not take down the whole network. Conclusion. There is no single technology that connects the last 400 million Africans. There is only the right combination, deployed deliberately, region by region, with affordability built in from the start, not added on as an afterthought once the infrastructure is already in the ground or already in orbit. The fiber crew and the satellite dish are not competitors. They are 2 tools in the same toolbox. The policy failure is treating them as a debate to be won, instead of a portfolio to be managed. If this video gave you a sharper, more honest picture of the LEO fiber 5G debate, share it with one person in your network making these infrastructure decisions. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification button. I will see you in the next video, which is showing on your screen now. And thank you for watching.